This is Why Am I a Mets Fan? A podcast hosted by Samantha Croston and Ashley Wenskowski.
All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back into the Why Am I a Mets Fan podcast. I'm your host, Samantha Croston, and I am joined today by Kevin Klein. He is the host of the Incline Dodgers Podcast, and he took some time out of his day to be here with us. So we really appreciate you being here, Kevin.
Thank you so much for having me, Samantha.
Pumped. So as you know, all of our viewers know at this point, the Mets actually won this series after a wild first game against them. Lost that first game, and then the Mets came back strong, won games 2 and 3 of this series. I guess I'll just pause and stop there. As a Dodgers fan, how did you feel about this series and the way it all went down?
I knew the Mets were going to bring their A game. I felt like it was going to be a tightly contested series, just kind of looking at the pitching matchups, and on paper was going to give the Mets the upper hand with the starters they had going. Dodgers are dealing with a number of injuries with their starting rotation. I'm not going to use that as an excuse because actually I was disappointed overall with the Dodgers offense, but we can get into that a little later. But yeah, I knew the Mets pitching was going to be tough. I knew Kodai Senga was waiting at the end of the series, and the Mets just were the better team in those 3 games.
Well, so let's talk about that. You mentioned the offense. Again, this was really a crazy, interesting series, and I think it was, anticipated for good reason, and it really lived up to the hype. This was a series where in the first game, the Dodgers won 7-5 in 13 innings. But beyond that, the Mets won game 2, 5-2. And then that last game was the Mets winning it 3-1. When you say that the offense disappointed you, talk more about that.
Yeah, so the big 3 for the Dodgers, Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, and Freddie Freeman went a combined 6 for 36 in that series, which equates to a 167 batting average. Shohei Ohtani only had that leadoff solo home run. Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman overall were pretty quiet. The offense as a whole for the Dodgers just didn't feel like they were able really to click with runners in scoring position. And you alluded to that extra innings game. That's a big part of it too. When you have the ghost runner at second base and you have nobody that's able to score for a few extra innings. And then finally the Dodgers broke through in the 13th. So yeah, a lot of frustrations with the offense, especially on the Dodgers end for me.
I will say I felt that frustration too, and I know that many of our viewers did as well. That first game, I really had it in my head that if the Mets were not able to win it in the 10th inning, I knew it was a bust from there. I knew it. I thought the Dodgers offense was too powerful, just historically speaking, and the way that they've been performing this year. And I had a feeling it was going to go downhill, and it did. But I'll actually flip that on you, the things you just said, considering the fact that most of our viewers are Mets fans. You said that you were disappointed in the Dodgers offense. Were you surprised by the Mets pitching at all?
Yeah, I mean, definitely that the middle game, David Peterson going 7 and 2/3 or 7 in the third, but regardless, getting into the 8th inning, and he just held the Dodgers offense in check the entire game. Felt like they were off balance and never really found any rhythm against him. Tommy Edman, who was the NLCS MVP, he was really not a factor at all in this series. I expected a little more from him. So yeah, the Mets starters, all of them, even Griffin Canning. I know the rain cut his start short, but even the Dodgers didn't really have anything going against him. Just no answer for any of the Mets starters in particular.
Knowing that the Mets are a team that A, the Dodgers will see again very soon, which we'll get into, but B, is a team that they could end up seeing in the playoffs. What were a couple of things that early on in the season you sort of maybe tagged as, this could be a problem down the line?
The Dodgers definitely have some issues defensively with a few players. Max Muncy at third base. He had a pretty crucial error in that third game, which led to the Pete Alonso 2-run home run. I imagine if they had gotten Juan Soto out, Landon Knack probably at the very least would give up a solo home run in the next inning, and that keeps the Dodgers a little closer in the game. MICHAEL Conforto, former Met, he's been kind of the weak link in the Dodgers lineup. There's a lot of talks out here, maybe just all the way bench him, but that's still to be determined given that it's still May 26th with a lot of baseball to be played. But Yeah, Conforto hasn't been good defensively. Max Muncy hasn't been good defensively. And that I think the Dodgers had a few errors, which kind of led to the Mets scoring in this series.
Let's take a beat on Conforto. 1 year, $17 million. How long do you think that the Dodgers will commit to Conforto? Do you think this was the right decision? How do you anticipate that playing out in the future?
Yeah, it's hard to say if it was like the wrong decision. They definitely had a void or an opportunity in the offseason, and it makes sense giving him a 1 year deal. I will say probably the way I'm looking at it, give him till mid-June. If he's not clicking by then, I would consider just maybe benching him altogether and try to trade him at the trade deadline. The Dodgers have the luxury of having such a long and lengthy lineup that they can afford to have one weak link in the lineup. And we just saw it recently. They DFA'd and released Chris Taylor, and they got rid of their backup catcher, Austin Barnes. So the mentality here is if you're not contributing, the Dodgers aren't going to hesitate to move on from you. And the other disappointing thing that I'll mention quickly is Ha-Seong Kim has been kind of one of the Dodgers' hot hitters and kind of adding a little bit of depth and length at the 9 hole slot, and I think that's kind of helped Shohei Ohtani get his rhythm going offensively. And we saw it in this series with Tommy Edman pretty much batting ninth in all the games, and he wasn't able to get on base. So I'd like to see the Dodgers get more Kim action because he's continued to be a pleasant surprise and scrappy hitter.
You also mentioned the rotation and the injuries, injuries with starting pitchers. Who is the one player who you are most excited to see come back?
So I've been asked this before, and I've it's a curveball answer, but the actual answer is Shohei Ohtani as a starting pitcher. I think of those three, Tyler Glasnow, Blake Snell, and Shohei Ohtani, Blake Snell is probably the best of the three, but I think what Shohei Ohtani is going to add to the Dodgers in the rotation when he gets back, I think that's just going to pump new life into this ball club as a whole. And it's going to get some of those bats, like they're going to wake up and they're going to want to play and give their best when Ohtani takes the mound because there's just been so much hype the last year and a half since the last time he took the ball and the mound for the Angels. So I think when the Dodgers add Shohei Ohtani, it's going to unlock something. Plus, they'll be able to fully commit to the 6-man rotation. So I think that's the big weight right now. I know that they're kind of backtracking his timeline to mid to late July when he can take the mound. But that's the pitcher I'm most excited to see return for the Dodgers.
Is there any part of you that feels like when Shohei Ohtani begins to pitch again, that it's going to mess up his hitting?
I do not think so. I think Ohtani is the unicorn, and even when he through a live practice that day, he hit a home run. So that was his first time throwing to live hitters in over a year, and then he hit a home run that night. So I don't think it's going to affect him.
Okay. We'll have to see whether or not that remains true, but I agree. He is definitely a unicorn. So at this point, the Mets and the Dodgers are both 32 and 21, but the road that lies ahead for them, at least in the next few weeks, is pretty different. The Dodgers have the Guardians coming up, the Yankees, and then they face the Mets again. The Mets have the White Sox, the Rockies, and then the Dodgers again. I want to know, what you think about that road that lies ahead, those series and those teams leading up to the Mets, and how important you think that this next series with the Mets really is.
It's a good question. For the Mets, the way I would kind of have their lens look right now, they need to worry about catching the Phillies. So they're going to need to win as many games as they can. For a team like New York, they would have to win the division. Otherwise, they'll be a wild card team. And for the Dodgers on the flip side, like I'm not too concerned about winning the division. I don't think the Padres nor the Giants or even the Diamondbacks for that matter are going to be there come September. I think the Dodgers are going to cruise their way once they get healthy to the 1 or 2 seed. So kind of the way I'm looking at it right now is it's still May, even when we get to June, to be honest. You just need to be kind of in the hunt within, I would say, 5 to 7 games of that 1 or 2 seed. And like I just said a second ago, for the Mets, I think winning more games is more crucial than for the Dodgers right now.
Out of curiosity, when you look at the NL West, who do you think is a better team, the Giants or the Padres?
Um, if healthy, probably the Padres. I think they have the better starting rotation as well as just the better top hitters with Fernando Tatis, Jackson Merrill, and Manny Machado. For the Giants, there's not really anyone in that lineup that puts any fear into me right now.
Fair enough. The only other thing that was on my mind when I think about looking ahead is obviously, as you know, Dodgers, reigning champs, they were able to defeat the Mets last year in the playoffs. I know that we're still early in the season. There's a lot of baseball left to be played. But what did you think about the Mets team that you saw this year compared to the one that the Dodgers faced last year as far as being able to overcome them as an obstacle?
Even though the Mets starting pitching looked really good in this series, I think in a best of seven, the Dodgers really wouldn't be that stymied by the Mets starters they would currently face right now. I know Sean Manaea is on the IL, and getting him back could obviously be a huge upgrade to the rotation. But if we're in the playoffs, I just can't imagine a world where Griffin Canning shuts the Dodgers down. Kodai Senga, he could be arguably the one that could stifle this Dodgers offense. But other than that, I don't think the Mets have the starting rotation right now to win a World Series. In terms of the lineup, Juan Soto really needs to break out of that funk. It was good to see for your Mets that he did show up in this Dodgers series, had a few big base hits, but you really will need Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor to break out of their slumps to have like any true momentum in a best of seven series. I just don't think the bottom of the Mets lineup has what it takes to get it done right now.
We may as well take a beat on that. Juan Soto, obviously, the past few days, there's been a little bit of momentum there, but just as a baseball fan, what have you thought of Juan Soto's start and how confident would you feel that he's going to be able to break out of this and kind of return back to that general Juan Soto shuffle sort of feeling?
Yeah, it was weird to see like in this series. I don't get to watch him on an everyday basis, but the shuffle you just mentioned, like where's that swagger when he's up there at the in the box? He just doesn't have the same kind of charisma that he used to, especially when he was in that Yankees uniform. Just felt like a different being. I do think ultimately Juan Soto is talented enough that he's going to turn it around and have a Juan Soto like season. The first few years of this contract, given that he's still relatively young, what, 26, he should be able to play at a high level for the next 5 to 7 years. And then you kind of worry about the second half of that contract later on. But I wouldn't panic right now. He's just too talented of a hitter overall, and he should be able to start to get it going. Maybe it's just getting accustomed to a new team. This is his third team in 3 years, so maybe just constantly having to change locker rooms is just mentally getting to him right now. Not really sure.
What do you think is the over under that the Dodgers win the World Series again this year?
Overall, I'd give us probably like a 60% chance they win the World Series. There's just a few teams overall in baseball entirely that I feel like could give us a run for their money. The Phillies, obviously, the Mets are up there. In the NL West, I actually am higher on the Arizona Diamondbacks. I think in a best of five, because that's how the format would work. You never get an NLCS with two division teams, I don't think. So we'd have to face the Diamondbacks probably, unless the Diamondbacks were to upset. I said that wrong. But if the Diamondbacks upset a 1 or 2 seed, then yeah, the Dodgers could face them in the NLCS. But the Diamondbacks are a threat to me. In the American League, there just really isn't anyone that stands out to me. I thought Baltimore was going to be good. They've been a hot mess. Texas, I thought would be good. Their offense has underperformed. I don't think the Yankees are for real, and anyone in the AL Central, I'm just not too worried about.
Fair enough. I like your honesty. All right, two more questions for you. Otani, Betts, Freeman, Lindor, Soto, Alonso. Which big three do you think is better?
I don't even have to hesitate. It's the Otani, Betts, Freeman. Those are three, no doubt about Hall of Famers. Soto and Lindor probably Hall of Famers. I don't know about Alonso, but Shohei Ohtani is the best hitter in baseball. Mookie Betts is a three-time World Series champion, and Freddie Freeman might just be the best pure swing guy in the sport.
Freddie Freeman is too much. He is awesome, man. And not to mention, I will say this genuinely, me and Ashley talk about this a lot on the Why Am I Mets Fan podcast. He just has a good personality. I think that's just a dude that you root for if you're interested in baseball at all.
Yeah.
But okay. My last question for you is walking away from this, knowing that the Mets are going to be facing the Dodgers again in the next 2 weeks or so. What's one thing that when you walk away from this series, you were impressed by as far as the Mets performance?
Besides the starting pitching, it felt like their defense was just clean. It seemed like anything hit their way, they were able to field it cleanly. Even Juan Soto made an amazing catch in right field. He robbed MICHAEL Conforto of probably what would have been a double. But I mean, Lindor is as flawless as it comes when it comes to the shortstop position. Brett Beatty looked good at third base. The catchers they had behind the plate, they were throwing runners out. They were doing a clean job calling the game, and everyone in the outfield just seemed to be reading the ball as well and making the routine or difficult catch. So the Mets defense really had it together in that series.
Brett Beatty had you a little worried, didn't he?
He surprised me. He showed up. I was not expecting that.
No, he's awesome. Kevin, tell people where they can find you and your work.
If you love the Dodgers, we're on YouTube, Apple, Spotify. Just look up the Incline Dodgers podcast. Should be pretty straightforward. You could find me on X or Twitter, whatever you want to prefer it to be called, at Klein25, or you can follow the podcast on social media as well. We're on Instagram and X, the Incline Pod.
Okay, this has been another edition of the Why Am I a Mets Fan podcast. Kevin, we will be seeing you and the Dodgers just a short time from now over in LA, so that will be interesting. Everybody be prepared for some nighttime ball games if you're on the East Coast. This has been the Why Am I a Mets Fan podcast. I'm Samantha Croston. We will see you back here when the next big thing happens. Thanks for joining us.